The Joel Fernandez Show is a talk show channeled spontaneously from source to edify and help raise the vibrations of truthers, starseeds, Christic alchemists, and others who have seen through this illusionary matrix into messianic consciousness by discussing hidden knowledge, higher dimensions, and manifesting so that we can shine our light for everyone to see and co create the earth that we know we actually deserve to live in. Don't! I gotta go! I'm working on the show!
Where is everybody? Come on, we got a show to do. Let's go.
Welcome back to the Joel Fernandez Show. I'm Joel Fernandez. And once again, we're just going to take this show whatever direction Source wants to take it. I was just burning some myrrh earlier, actually, and if you watch this show, you know how much I just love myrrh. It's one of the best plants with the highest vibration that you can use just to raise your vibration and keep it up there. But one of the most profound effects that I have gotten from the myrrh has actually been to burn some right before going to sleep. And my dreams, honestly, like, you don't want to do this every day probably, but yeah, if you go every other day or once every 3 days, my goodness, it's like I knew my dreams were in series before this. And I mean, like, crazy sequences, right? Like, sometimes I'll have a bunch of dreams and they'll all be like in one timeline and really sequential, right? And then I'll have another dream, but it will be part of a completely different timeline that I might have forgotten about. But every so often I have dreams that remind me. And it's like the character development and the places and everything in these dreams. There's no way these things are just figments of our imagination or just like the brain putting pieces of the day back together. These are literal other planes, and what goes on there, like, some of it definitely affects this plane. But we have completely parallel lives and things that we can't necessarily do maybe in this reality. We might be completely unharnessed when it comes to the other realities. So sometimes dreams can give us insights into aspects of our personality where maybe there is inner work to do, but we just can't see it because of the way circumstances or just life events have built up on top of things to keep us from accessing those facets of our own consciousness, right? But as we expose different aspects of ourselves, if we really care about making ourselves better, we can bring it to light and just scrutinize it in the light of pure awareness. Actually, just that focus on those things. Sometimes just bringing it to light is all you need in order to burn that dross away, to change that perspective, to put a stop to that momentum and, change that habit almost overnight. And for some instances, that's what happens. I'm not saying everything happens that way. Most things take a bit of work, and especially even if it doesn't take that long, sometimes the aftermath and just reassimilating and, making adjustments in your life, that is more of a process than the actual nipping of the bud, so to speak. So the more we look at ourselves, the more aspects we can really bring to the surface. Not all of them might be easy to address. Some of them might be really painful to look at. But we want to do a sincere job because, yeah, we all know we're capable of better things. But are we really at the place where we want to be? Yeah, maybe with dealing with other people, sometimes we can get complacent, or sometimes we see other people's faults, right? Much more easily. And it's a lot more difficult to actually want to rise above all of that, right? Because sometimes if you start rising above all of that, you don't fit in with the same group as much. Your interests start to change, or just the way you think about things that they're doing or conversations that are going on. You just think differently about these things because you're looking at it with a deeper awareness, as if, there's like added dimensionality to this focus beam. I just love trying to put these, non-physical concepts into descriptive words. But sometimes it's really difficult to grasp these concepts, and I think very visually. So it's funny. Sometimes I'll describe completely abstract concepts and like graphics, which is kind of cool, but it's just the way this mind works. It's nonstop and it's constantly just spitting out graphics. I don't know if I'll actually share some of my art on this channel. My art is kind of personal and I just do it for me, but I always believed that art is the Actually, you know what? I'm going to get that quote because that's an important quote. Oh, I got monitors everywhere. Let's see here. Quotes, reference. Mine, art. Okay. Art. Art is. Art is everything, everywhere. It is all around us. It is what we see, how we think, why we react the way we do, what we are thinking about. Life is art, and the essence of art is life experienced. Yet, if all is art, and art is all, then how does it evade us? How are we not experiencing the beauty of all things existent? Why does art only seem to be the talent of a select few? The truth of the matter is that we are all artists. We all have a story waiting to be told, an expression waiting to be understood, or a message waiting to be heard by someone who needs to hear it. Yet, in order to facilitate our lives, we adhere to imposed schedules, contracting out our lifetime by 8-hour shifts to pay bills, mortgages, and taxes. We have no time to experience life in its simplicity, and less than that with which we can use to express ourselves, each one of us. That's an important quote because we're all born with a creative aspect. That's what art is. It's the active application of applying a creative principle. So in school we had periods like creative writing or like art class, right? Painting. And then of course when we were younger, it was like mostly all art. And then there was like one class that was like math or something. But it was like, play in the sandbox time or Play-Doh time. And I remember my favorite was like play in the water. We actually had like this little, I don't know what it was, but it was just like it was kind of like a little plastic tray and it was filled with water and they had like this, the steam paddle kind of thing. Weird stuff. But anyway, that was my favorite. And I only got to do that like once a month, which was strange now that I think about it. I wonder if that was like a ration privilege. Like we got to do everything else at least once a day because you got to choose, but you had to try to get the water, whatever I keep thinking mini game, but it's not a mini game. I don't think it was like any favoritism. I just think like that period was on ration. And man, I'm guilty. Of course, like I've been an artist striving to be my whole life, but you always have compromises, You always think like, I got to work to make this money or I got to do this. Of course, we think that way. But once we get momentum rolling behind those kind of thoughts, like that just spirals out of control. And it usually takes a rude awakening to snap you out of that momentum because otherwise it just spirals out of control. And that's what happened to me last year. And I'm so grateful because it set me back on course with, first off, who I am, where I'm going. But like, of course, I was always in tune with my own attitude, my own direction, how I as a person was developing and growing, I was always focused on that because ultimately that's the only thing you can take with you, right? Self-development. And if you don't do a good job with the time that you're given, you can think of the time given as like a pie chart, right? How much of that time is going to be a better person? How much of that time chart is going to sleeping, right? Because some of it is. And eating or preparing your food. It's all part of this pie chart. And the more time you spend focusing and growing and developing, then the more harvest you're going to have, right? But not only that, when you plant a seed for the whole world to benefit, the whole world benefits. That's the nature of this crop we're planting. And that's why dark forces, they don't care so much about money because you know what? That's manifestable. That's all manifestable. But souls, how do you grab a whole bunch of souls, right? You grab them in their mind. It's a battle for our mind. And once we put those guards up in our mind, again, that pie chart, what is going in? Like you can think of your attention span as that whole pie chart and divide it up by the time of the day. What is going in? What kind of media are you ingesting, right? What's your mental diet? Because it's not so much what you eat, it's what's in here. And then from what's in here, that will affect your diet. And you can have like the cleanest diet ever, right? But still hate everybody, right? So your diet hasn't done you a bit of good in terms of personality. But if your personality has affected your diet so that you've incorporated this principle of harmony or nonviolence or however, just communion, right? A sense of communion in your diet, then your diet choices will reflect that. But if you're making diet choices for, selfish health reasons, it's going to exemplify as you actually doing dietary choices that are going to hurt you in the long run. But you won't think so. And you might be following a strict program, right? But it will manifest as you choosing a program that's subpar, to say the least. But that goes for every aspect of life, right? Think about people that keep making the same bad choices at relationships or employment, right? They live in a bad neighborhood and then they get up, they finally move out, and guess where they end up? They end up in a street, maybe the neighborhood's totally different, but they chose the house on the street that's just like their old place. And of course, the classic example are the relationship patterns, right? Or like someone has an abusive parent and then they go off and marry the exact same personality. We've heard these examples ad nauseum, but that's just the way reality works. And how do you break past that, right? I mean, we all want something better inside. We all know we're capable of something better. That's the reason why these scenarios are painful to endure. But we can tap into that scenario, and that is done through imagination. While we access it through imagination, we're actually creating like a pipeline, like a conduit. And that conduit is connected with basically source energy. That's why those scenarios, if you allow them in your imagination, in your mind's eye for a time, and you just kind of experience that state of being, that's why it feels so good to live those experiences out. It's like liberating. It's almost like refreshing. It's like you're bathing in this river stream, but that stream is the flow of divine inspiration from source. That is the vision of a better world that's inside you. And all you have to do is tap into it for some time. And you don't have to visualize it fully, right? You don't have to say, okay, this is what that vision looks like. And in the morning, I get out of this bed and I look out this window and I see this view. And I take the elevator downstairs in my mansion. And, the maid makes me this breakfast. And then I take this car out and then I have this kind of speaking engagement. And, whatever it is, like you don't have to have all these details. But the feeling of a fulfilled world basically is summed up with satisfaction, peace, and wholeness, harmony. Other languages have words like this, like, of course, the Semitic shalom, salaam. It embodies this idea of pure harmony, but a harmony where everything is whole, everything is complete. There's nothing needed and nothing is imbalanced. But that same harmony is expressed in the Sanskrit term shanti. And that is actually a state of being where everything is harmoniously balanced, but everybody's working together. That's why the ancient Indian term namaste literally means I bow to you, or like I worship you, but it's not the person. It's not an egoic meaning. It actually means I worship or I make reverence to the divine spark, the God inside you. But that God inside you is a singularity that's literally awareness. And that awareness is fractalized in all things. So all things that are aware literally have a shred of this singularity in them. And that is the actual source. That is the whole reason why we can, as awareness, affect our experience of physical reality. It's because awareness is the projector. It is the light beam, it is the projector, and it creates that film strip. So if you change the film strip, that is how you manifest a different projection on time-space experience. Let's say it that way. It's not the matter that changes, because the matter still has to unfold towards that change. The change is the experience of it. And if you embody that state of being instantly, then the flow to that end result is going to be much smoother. Sometimes there are many, many events that need to unfold for that end result to take place. And it's going to be a while. But if you shift your state of being first, prioritized in your mind, then not only will that shift seem light and easy and joyful, and you're actually going to have fun doing it, but you're going to have fun carrying it out. You'll actually be one of the people on the leading edge, leading the edge forward into a new world. And you probably didn't even expect it. I mean, that's what's happened to me, and not just with this channel and with this show. Like, this channel and this show is like number 4 or number 5 on this list. It's like the projects are unfolding. Right brainism is literally coming back with a vengeance, and we're going to see right brain curriculums, which I'm working on right now. We're literally going to see schools open up where they're devoted to right brain arts, and that's what art is, right? They became electives when we got older, and if we were lucky, right, some of the schools that some people attended to, guilty as charged, didn't have electives, and like you would expect some of your most basic electives, but I had it pretty bad. Some of those classes were just straight out torture in the school I went to. Let's not go there. No bashing, but some things really could have been different. But those classes, those same right brain classes, was what we were enticed as children in kindergarten, right? We had whole periods that was just play in the water or, finger painting. Like, I mean, think about that. Would you go to a high school where they were all doing finger painting? That would be pretty neat. And I loved art school, but I really didn't get into it because school made me left brain, and I tried to think abstractly and artistically. And how did I do that? I'm like, oh, architecture, and I love architecture. But when I got in, I realized, oh my goodness, there's a lot of physics, and they're not teaching design principles, basic design principles, right? And for me, it's like I was really good at physics in high school. I'm like, I don't need to focus on this. So I knew that there was much more for me, right? And I could have settled. I could have said, you know what? This is where it ends. This is what I chose. Great, let me do a good job. But I'm like, no, there's more. There's more. And boom, all of a sudden, once I made that decision, it looked like, again, things fell apart around me. Like, not just school, but relationships and my job. A whole bunch of things. Just, it was like there was an earthquake. And I even made a picture about that very year. I made a few decisions and it was like boom, boom, boom. Actually, old habits that I had were vaporized. That's actually an apt word to say, because what happened was things that were absolutely destroying me, I couldn't let go of. And all of a sudden, I had a medicine that completely turned everything around and took care of old addictions too. Like I used to drink like a tank, and at first I thought there was nothing wrong with it because really you can go down, just down the street and buy as much as you want. There's no warning on the bottle that says, hey, if you drink this much, you just might wake up dead. But I was literally able to drop all of that. And yes, people that I wanted to, get closer with, or I wanted to fix relationships that might not have been working so great, or I needed a job because I thought I was going to change school, I might not get a practicum right away, all that. And boom, boom, boom. It was like a bunch of dominoes fell overnight. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to get in tune with Source. And I did it without any religious filters. I remember, I was raised in the Judeo-Christian, very strong scriptural basis. And I was reading this text well before preschool. But one day, I just was so sick. Like in those days, I was probably pre-diabetic, if not already crossed the line. Like I was bad. And I remember one day I was just feeling like passing out. And it was like in the middle of the workday. And there was no reason why I should feel bad except that my eating habits and stuff was just horrible.
Joel, want some kimchi? Yeah, sure. That's only, the 5th time today?
And of course, the depression had escalated just because of the relationships and just because of situations. But I stepped aside just for a moment and I just called out to Source inside. Hey guys, Editor Joel here. I'm just in the middle of editing this episode and I realized I didn't quite clarify how this instance went down. But what happened was I just took a moment, and at work I went into the washroom and I really tuned in with my heart, and I didn't want any religious connotations, right? So I went to God the way I understood that at a baseline. I didn't want, the law of Moses or even the story of Jesus. So I went all the way down to the most personal God that I could think of, and I said, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, if you're real, help me. I didn't say, give me a better life, give me a dream job. I didn't even think that my job would change, my relationships was changing. I just didn't want to pass out that day. And that was how I said it. And later on, actually much more recently, I learned that it was Moses that had the revelation that God is a divine, just God. And that is embodied in the term Yahweh or Jehovah. And then, of course, from there, you have the law of Moses that comes out of that. And from there, you have the Sanhedrin and all that stuff. Jesus comes way later. So it's all stories built upon stories, right? And later on, I learned that Yahweh or Jehovah, which is the nature of God that Moses had, actually informed him that, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob didn't know me this way. They just knew me as El Shaddai. And if you translate the term El Shaddai, honestly, it actually means God of my breast. And that's all it is. You're talking to that heart frequency, and that's in you. That's life force. We all have life force in us. It's just that these people historically were doing it and they thought it was so great that other people wrote books about them, right? And then other people built edifices around them, and then it became an institution. So I didn't want any of that institution, and I didn't know really what I was looking for, but I found it, and I found it in that heart frequency. It's in all of us. It's life force. So I just wanted to clarify that because this is literally what changed everything. And then it was like a whole bunch of things. I just didn't want to do them anymore. And then one day, I called some friends and they're like, dude, we just don't want to hang out anymore. And I mean, that was a whole bunch of drama in its own. But all these things just kind of escalated. And even my job, it was like I left on good terms. And then even when I did leave, my manager's like, we're going to keep you on the roster just in case you decide to come back. And that was when I actually got accepted. Like I took 6 months off from school from my previous year, and I just spent time, getting in tune with Source within. And you know how that manifested? That manifested as me just staying up till 4 in the morning every night doing Photoshop, photo manipulations, and what have you. But I was getting in tune with Source. I was really honing a vision within me. And actually, by June, July, I had this burst of inspiration just came in, and I said, you know what? I'm going to go to school and do this art thing. And there was just a couple courses, and most of them were like, I didn't want to go to art school like ACAD, just because all the art in that school, it's very left brain linear based, but they take all the art out of it. It's just the way that art schools teach art. So I'm like, I want to learn like a design course. I want to really get into art as art is, so that I can step out of this course and actually apply art. So what I found was a graphic design course. The course itself actually taught me Photoshop and all that, but it was a lot of theory. There was a lot of actual hands-on like projects, hands-on assignments that, my goodness, they really helped my portfolio on top of just practice. And then the practicums were lined up like perfect. So it was like just one thing led to the next, right? And I manifested literally the greatest like school and practicum, and then working with the greatest group of people. But interestingly, there was still a lot of baggage that once I started experiencing the drama of the workplace, that subconscious programming that I hadn't dealt with at that time started to resurface. And a lot of the same cycles in the workplace just started to recur. A lot of the school stuff, a lot of my personal stuff, and the way like my work ethic performed, like a lot of stuff there changed, because I saw myself now as an artist. I saw myself doing work from a right brain, or rather a holistically functioning brain, rather than the left linear brain, which is kind of like push and pull. But not only that, you're wrestling with your coworkers. You're constantly wondering, are they trying to get one up on me? Even if you consider yourself a coworker team, you still one versus the other, right? So I had stepped out of that, and I noticed that expectations in my behavior to individuals were a bit different, but in the whole group and the way people work together, and my expectations from a business, it just was so bad because I hadn't done things to it. And with new expectations, I didn't know how to implement it. So things cycled back. But because I was earnest and I really dug deep, and every time a problem presents itself, it's because there's something in me that is not harmonizing with that. If I could, like Aikido, I wouldn't need much effort, and I could deflect it and move on. Or move through it, or use it to move forward. That's what life experiences are. None of them are static. None of them are permanent. But it's like, the banks of a river that help steer that river. And that's the way you want to be, is like the water flowing through that river. You don't want to fight the edges. You want to see that it's there to keep you in a certain path. But anyway, the more I dug into it, the more was exposed to me. So the job that I had ended up being replaced by one that I thought was completely below me. But it was actually by only a set of really dire circumstances that I actually ended up choosing that job. And when I did, I realized, you know what, I don't belong here. But back at my old job, I was putting up with these kind of routines and a bunch of grief from the managers. And, it wasn't that bad, but in this workplace, it was all there on the surface. And I was like, you know what? Let me look at all of this and let me really address each of these subjects inside of me. So I dealt with abusive managers, and where they're all power junkies, right? Just trying to get one up on each other. Managers, right? Fighting with each other. crazy stuff that they did to each other and us, just crazy work hours, crazy work environment, and the mind games, right? It's not so much the workplace safety, but it's the mental safety. And of course, there was workplace safety and a bunch of things also questionable that they would just, they wouldn't even find loopholes because they were the manager and they were the authority. Like, you had to do it. But if someone else pointed out that there was a hazard, oh, yeah, let's acknowledge it. But as soon as the manager says nothing's wrong. But anyway, as I worked through all of those issues, I didn't know what I was doing. I thought, I have to do things. I have to look for another job. I have to try to find another job because, you know what? I have a diploma in graphics, right? But I didn't realize that I was actually manifesting a better job because I was really doing all this inner work. It just showed up suddenly. Like, I was literally expecting a job, just like somewhere else. But all of a sudden, I just got an offer from an office to start off as like lead designer. And it was crazy because, I didn't have much experience, but they looked at the practicum and they actually saw like my results in class. So based on all that, they're like, we want you to start, but we're going to give you a trial period. And all of a sudden, it was like, one door closed and there was no way I was going back. And this other door opened, which I was just like, I wanted to run towards with like, I just couldn't look back. And that's the way manifesting is. When one door closes, it's something that you've completely cut off and there's no question where you're going because it literally is like, it falls into your lap. And from there, I literally bought out that company and started my own printing business. So there's literally no end to how high we can take this. And that just kept going higher. Until I uncovered more aspects of business expectations that weren't quite where I needed them to be. So I had to recalibrate and bring them into focus and direct them in a way that actually made me money without me having to sacrifice things that I was sacrificing before. Like, simple things like time or like paying rent for an office when I didn't need to, paying rent for storage or paying rent for, certain kinds of equipment when I didn't need to, because there's a much cheaper way. There's a much more efficient way. And you can literally, like, you can have the most money, but just be a total fool with it and it will slip out of your hands like nothing. And you won't be using it for what you came to use it for. Right? And that's to benefit everyone. Once you spend it on this cause, the cause of source, that's to integrate and harmonize and bring all people together, to literally wake all of humanity up, that end, that purpose, right? That fulfillment, there's no way anybody loses. And the whole beauty of this is that you use your intent. It doesn't have to be, if I put it in this organization, they're going to use it for a benevolent cause. And because of that, I can trust them and it can only go there because even if one of their employees gets it, I don't know if I can trust them. It's not how that works. Because even if you intend money with that connection with source and you intend it to go in a place where it will benefit all, then even if it goes to the most shoddy enterprise, the person that picks up that money and puts it aside and actually uses it for whatever project will be the very person that needs to. And for that intent, that seed sown will bring its harvest. So the method that we actually use to describe the seed, to name this seed, is just our intention. And we can do so, by speaking it. We can do so with our thoughts. But just that intention, that directed focus of awareness is saying, this is it. And mind you, not doing so in a state of like panic or just, I need to control this because it might be a different way. No. See that end from the beginning. See that fulfillment and say, this is the state. This is the end result. This is the image that I am seeing for this outcome. And then that intention is like a projector, like a Xerox copy, you know, and it just spits out a photocopied representation of that as physical experience. And the process of that unfolds as a time gap. There's a time sequence of events that need to unfold in order for that end to play out. But that end will be realized. It will be final as a scene, as a snapshot scene in the sequence of your life experience. Just remember, we have control. You have control because you are awareness, and just direct that awareness to an end scene that you prefer to experience. That's already inside you. You don't need me to tell you what is or what's better for you. You already have a better scene inside you, but just allow that some time in your imagination. And when you come out of that, you're still going to find yourself in this world, but all of a sudden you'll be thinking like that person in the scene. But because you're thinking differently, you're going to start doing things differently. And those actions are going to add up. And eventually you're going to see how all of those events lined up to get you to that scene. Like sometimes the accuracy of this scene, like it's unbelievable. Like be careful that you're not seeing yourself from third person. You know, if you want something to happen to you, don't see it as if you're watching yourself from a movie, from a camera, you know, from third person, like outside yourself. You want to see through your eyes. You want to experience it and get all your senses involved. Touch things, smell things, right? Taste things, whatever it is. Really get into it, because not only you want to get your five senses involved and all of that involved, you want to get your thoughts, you want to get your emotions. So as you're doing something, what are you thinking? What might you be thinking about doing later that day, or, you know, something like that? Really get into that person's thoughts. What kind of emotions also are going on? Make sure you really get into those emotions, right? Feel the scene alive. Feel the feelings as if you're interacting with the people and the places in the scene. Of course, that state of being, that feeling just of what is embodied by just that whole state, that can be summed up as a singular feeling. And that is like literally the magnet that will pull you to that end scene. That is the end scene. It's embodied as that state. So that's the key. Once you get that right, and once you're fulfilled there, that fulfilled state is going to pull you to that end. So that's literally what this body actually is. It's like I said, the projector, the light of the projector is actually awareness. And that awareness is the same throughout, but it's fractalized into each of us. Now, each of us is the projector, like our bodies are the projector, but the screen or the film that we project that awareness through are our beliefs, our expectations. That is literally summed up as that state of being inside of us. And that can even be one state of being for all of our life experience. But it can be segmented into different scenes. And if we have one scene, you know, where we're enjoying, let's say, a nice car, that can be embodied as the state of being in that imaginal scene. But don't stop there. I'm saying use all senses, because every single one of those senses can bring to pass an experience of that scene fulfilled. Like that sense will be reflected back as an experience to you in physical reality. It's pretty cool the way that happens. So you want to get the whole scene involved. All senses, all feelings, you know, all thoughts. Really get into it and embody that state of a fulfilled reality where you're creating literally heaven on earth, right? Utopia. When you're imagining it, you're in utopia. You're feeling the feeling as if you're living in utopia. And that feeling inevitably has to manifest as a physical experience. It has to. We just have to clear the baggage then that's in the way. But that's how you set direction for where you want different timelines of experience to unfold. So at the very least, I mean, it's better to set that as a direction than something worse. right? So when we're panicking, when we're fearful, when we're stressing out about things, guess what? We're steering it a bit more in a worse direction. And things have to unfold that match that. Inevitably, that's just the way that reality works. That's just the way events unfold. So let's sow the seeds for good events that we can actually enjoy, that the whole world can enjoy maybe, but at least that we can enjoy. And then we'll start to reap those, maybe one by one at first, but that garden will grow more and more thick, and as it does, we'll see more and more growth, and we're gonna overgrow the government.
And I am never going to retreat. I want to overgrow the governments of the United States. I want to overgrow the government of Canada. There should be Canadians everywhere.
We're going to overgrow this world. It's going to be an amazing time. It's already an amazing time to be alive because things are already shifted. Things are already shifting, and we're already seeing an awakening like we've never seen before. And it's only going to continue to grow because the pressure is actually making this thing accelerate. Even now, it would have been great if it stopped with a little bit of people waking up, or certain people just waking up to the aspects of the media or government that is corrupt, right? But because the pressure is still on, people are waking up, not just to that, but to much deeper things, right? People are getting in tune with Source. And because of that, there's a unity, there's an awakening that's just unstoppable. It's unstoppable. So it's really amazing times, really great. Just keep raising because we're getting to a place where we've never been as humanity. And once we get there, moving forward is going to be even more amazing. So do what you can now, because we might not have some of the ways to step forward and grow and actually look at ourselves and change in the way we can now to where we're going, because things might really be different. I've talked a whole lot. I've got to get going. I've got some overnight oats that are just wonderful. I made them without peanut butter this time, but that's the thing. Many of these recipes, you just put whatever you want, add whatever you want, mix some berries, chop some bananas, maybe sprinkle some almonds or cashew nuts, like whatever you want. These recipes can be amazing. And because they're vegan, because they're high vibe, they really not only make you feel good and healthy and give you like super energy, but they totally transform you from the inside out. And because you're not being bogged down by fragments of animal souls, you can actually think as a B'nai Elohim, because you're on that level and you're living from that level and you're manifesting from that level. So amazing times. We're really stepping forward and we're really raising. So do the work now while the pressure's on, and really squeeze the oil out of that olive, right? Squeeze the juice out of that grape so we can make new wine. And those olives, mind you, you also have olives in the back of your brain, and that's connected to the living Christ. So we're ushering in literally the Messianic age, the Christic era, where we all literally can step into this aspect we've been calling Christ consciousness for a long time, but which has evaded the majority of humanity. But we're going to see things absolutely shift. Just like the oracles of Joel say, this is a transformative time where we're literally going to see animals come with us into this new world, this new era. So I love you guys. I'll see you in the next video. From the bottom of my heart, Joel signing out. Agape. Salaam. Namaste. Ka-chung, ka-chung.